Today, we are diving into the really complicated story of Monica Cannon Grant. She was a celebrated, high-profile community activist in Boston who seemed to rise out of nowhere, only to face this massive federal indictment that basically put her entire public image on trial.
Okay, so let's start right where the trouble began. After she was indicted on some really serious charges, this was her message to everyone. To the public, to the press, she was defiant, she was clear. I'm innocent.
Can you understand why they might be upset given the fact that you're under federal investigation?
No, because I'm innocent until proven guilty.
But here's the twist, and it's a big one. This is where the story ends. After all that time insisting she was innocent, she walks into a federal court and pleads guilty. It's a huge shift, right? So what on earth happened between that confident declaration and this stunning reversal? How did we get from point A to point B?
To really get the full picture, we've got to rewind a bit. Because before the indictment, Monica Cannon Grant wasn't just an activist. She was one of Boston's most visible, most celebrated public figures.
She hails from Boston's Roxbury neighborhood and is best known as a community activist. Now, she came to fame in 2017 when she organized a counter-protest against what she and many others considered to be a white supremacist rally in Boston.
We're not standing against white supremacy. We're not going to have it in our city, not in Boston, not in Roxbury. We're not having it.
I mean, her rise was just meteoric. Look at this timeline. In 2017, she's organizing this massive counter-protest and starting her own initiative. Just 3 years later, she's leading the biggest rallies in the city and being crowned Bostonian of the Year. Her influence just exploded.
We're not standing against white supremacy. We're not going to have it in our city, not in Boston, not in Roxbury. We're not having it.
As many as 40,000 people turned out Saturday, showing opposition to the expected message of the rally in a march against white supremacy. At the beginning of the march in Roxbury, organizers spoke out against the agendas of neo-Nazis and white supremacists, but also the mixed response to them from President Trump.
And at the heart of all this was her nonprofit. The organization she founded, Violence in Boston, it really became the cornerstone of her entire public identity. It was a symbol of her commitment to her community.
And the growth of this organization was nothing short of explosive. Seriously, think about this. It started as a Facebook page, and in less than 4 years, it ballooned into a multi-million-dollar nonprofit. That's wild, and it totally cemented her status as a major force in Boston.
And the organization's public profile was seriously impressive. It claimed to have fed tens of thousands of families. It was attracting all this funding. We're talking pandemic relief money and even a grant that came straight from the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office. And her personal brand grew right along with it. She was commanding pretty hefty fees just for showing up and speaking.
But then, the whole thing just came crashing down. In March of 2022, a federal indictment was unsealed, and it laid out these incredibly serious fraud allegations against both Monica Cannon Grant and her husband.
So here's where things really start to unravel for her. The prosecution's case kind of zeroed in on this one grant that seemed to tell a much bigger story. The DA's office, believing in her work, gave her nonprofit $6,000 for violence prevention. So the question becomes, where did that money actually go?
Y'all are trying to clock what I'm doing, and you're monitoring, because the DA's office gave me a $6,000 grant. And I was like, y'all are monitoring $6,000. I spent 20 grand in the month of August. You don't get it. Off of grassroots fundraising, helping women, paying light bills, paying rent.
Well, according to prosecutors, it wasn't going to youth outreach. They painted a very different picture. They alleged that the grant money was used to pay for personal expenses. We're talking trips to the nail salon, hotel rooms, gas for the car, and even car rentals. It's a really stark contrast to what the money was supposed to be for.
In June 2019, Cannon Grant accepted a $6,000 grant for violence prevention from a Massachusetts district attorney's office. Prosecutors say that money instead went to a nail salon, going out to eat, hotel rooms, fuel costs, and car rentals.
And then there was the issue of her salary, or I guess her lack of a salary, at least officially. While Cannon Grant and her husband presented themselves as unpaid volunteers leading the charity, federal authorities alleged she was actually paying herself a pretty significant income, over $170,000 in 2021 alone.
And it didn't even stop there. The indictment went beyond the nonprofit's money.
It also accused the couple of collecting more than $100,000 in pandemic unemployment benefits, money meant for people who were out of work, all while they were allegedly pulling in a substantial income from the nonprofit and other jobs. And this is where the evidence got really personal. Prosecutors presented text messages from Cannon Grant herself. This one, to her husband, was part of the court documents, and it really seems to show her acknowledging the whole unemployment issue long before they were ever charged.
According to court documents, Cannon Grant and her husband presented themselves as unpaid leaders of the nonprofit. But authorities say Cannon Grant paid herself an income of more than $25,000 in 2020 and more than $170,000 in 2021. Authorities also say the couple collected more than $100,000 in pandemic unemployment assistance, though Cannon Grant was earning tens of thousands of dollars in consulting fees and her husband was earning weekly pay from a job. The couple's accused of using the money on plane tickets, new furniture, to defray the cost of a motorcycle and more.
So with these bombshell allegations out in the open, how did she react? Well, the indictment sent shockwaves through Boston for sure, but she definitely did not retreat from the public eye. She didn't back down, not at all. In fact, she kind of leaned into it. She kept giving speeches, including one at a local high school that got some parents pretty upset. And she started framing her legal problems not as a personal failure, but as part of this bigger pattern of the federal government targeting Black activists.
Jim, I'm a Black woman in America. I will never trust the police.
No matter what.
No matter what.
A few moments later.
Stop asking me how I feel about having a Black police commissioner. He ain't doing a mother thing for the Black community, okay? He did not do for us. That him being in that position don't mean the same way he got on Facebook with his free speech bull talking about how he want to have free speech to critique the ACLU who's fighting for immigrants and making sure that they ain't deporting people to goddamn ICE, right? Meanwhile, here I am going live asking for housing assistance.
Many months later.
Can you understand why they might be upset given the fact that you're under federal investigation?
No. Because I'm innocent until proven guilty.
And then, right in the middle of this whole legal firestorm, something truly tragic happened. Just a few months after the indictment came down, her husband and co-defendant, Clark Grant, was killed in a motorcycle accident. It just added this heartbreaking layer to an already incredibly complicated public story.
A motorcycle crash has killed the husband of Monica Cannon Grant, the community organizer who's under indictment on fraud charges. Clark Grant was killed in a crash in Easton last night. Grant was facing charges, along with his wife, that they used money for her nonprofit Violence in Boston for themselves. Both have pleaded not guilty to those charges.
You can imagine the community was just torn. While a lot of people were shocked by the allegations, some of her supporters stood by her. And this quote from one of them kind of gives you a different way of looking at it, that maybe any financial mistakes were because they were just inexperienced with running a nonprofit, not because they were trying to commit crimes.
Again, she's innocent until proven guilty.
That's the reaction today at the anti-violence nonprofit organization founded by Cannon Grant and her husband, Violence in Boston, which uses this building in Hyde Park as a social impact center.
She has me working with the gangs in the streets to make sure that, we can kind of stem down violence. Can't be mad at a person like that. I mean, yeah, we make mistakes. Yeah, we may have messed up, but again, we're not educated on what a 501c3 is supposed to do all the time.
And all of this whole complicated mess, brings us right back to where we started, the final outcome of the case and that complete 180 from her initial plea.
A few moments later.
A Boston community activist is going to be sentenced in January after pleading guilty to federal fraud charges.
This BLM leader pled guilty to defrauding her investors, which included some law enforcement offices like district attorneys' offices that gave her money for her anti-violence campaign.
So here's how it all wrapped up, legally speaking. After first pleading not guilty to everything and getting ready for a big trial, Cannon Grant completely changed course. She pleaded guilty to 18 federal counts, admitting to wire fraud, conspiracy, lying to a mortgage lender, the whole shebang. So, with that guilty plea, it was official. The U.S. Attorney's Office confirmed that she had in fact used thousands and thousands of dollars in donations and grant money meant for her anti-violence charity for her own personal benefit. funding things like vacations, rent, and other daily living expenses. You know, it's worth zooming out for just a second here. The source material for this explainer makes it clear that this local Boston case doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's actually part of a much wider national conversation about financial questions and scrutiny being directed at other, larger Black Lives Matter affiliated groups all over the country.
So what are we left with? The story of Monica Cannon Grant is a really complicated one. It's about activism, it's about community, it's about accountability. And it leaves us with this very difficult question that goes way beyond just this one case. When a public figure who has done a lot of acclaimed good in the world is also proven to have done some seriously wrong things, how do you and I make sense of all that? How do we reconcile those two things?